Welcome everybody, my name is Michael, and today, the beauty of Poland. Yes. We are going to be discussing my time thus far, in car sales. Oh boy. Yes, car sales takes a special type of attitude. You gotta be ready for it. You have to be excited. You've gotta be passionate about your product, whatever it may be, whether it's the best product or the worst product in the world. You have to have some passion, because if you have no passion, how are you going to buy anything from somebody who's like, "Ooh, I hate my life, I hate this product, I hate this, I'm trying to sell you something"? No, you're going to go bankrupt, dude. So I had a couple people ask me how's everything so far, and I like it, I enjoy it. I'm still new, I'm still in training. I have to watch YouTube videos about how to sell, how to do car sales, how to qualify. There's so many different strategies that I still have to learn, how to go through objections and not care and be very confident regardless of whether you know the answers or not, because there's going to be many times where you have no idea, and sometimes you just can't BS them, because if you overpromise and then you sell a car actually, and then they come back with some issues, some complaints, then it's on you, and you don't want that. You want to provide a quality customer experience. You want to have good reviews. You want to have happy customers. So in the future, I haven't had this yet because I'm still very new at this and it takes a while. It's not like selling other things. Cars, usually the average person buys a new car, at least in America, every few years, or even greater. Some people buy every 10 years, or maybe every 20 years if their car lasts a really long time and they love it. But when they're ready, it is a big purchase. The only other big purchase is buying a house or potentially a wedding, but many people would put a car above a wedding because you need that to get to work. You need it to get to school. You might need it for your work, actually, not getting to work, but it could be your Uber. You're doing Lyft or DoorDash, or you're a taxi driver or limo service, or you're delivering packages for Amazon, whatever it be. But there's so many tasks nowadays that in America you need a vehicle, and that's it. So you're going to try and find the best vehicle for you. And if you're unhappy with that, if you're unhappy with the service, if you're unhappy with the sales guy, you're going to go to the next dealership, and that's fine. I don't blame you. So there's a lot to learn. So right now, I've been there 5 weeks, a little over 5 weeks, so we can discuss how that has been so far. There's some things that I may not share fully, but in the future, maybe I'll be able to share more. But whatever I deem is comfortable to share, then we're able to go into that, and you're able to ask me anything, and maybe in future videos, if I didn't address something, we're able to go into that. But let's begin. Why did I choose sales? Well, that's because I was in marketing for many years, and that was involved with social media, and I love social media marketing, but I hate everything aside of that. For example, when I would freelance, there'd be clients who would want, even within social media, they'd want 1 million followers. Well, great. Do you have the money for it? Do you know how much money it takes to get to 1 million legitimate, valid followers, not fake, not bot ones, not something that's going to destroy your entire social media page because the algorithm detects it? You think Google's stupid? They don't know you got fake bots on your account? Of course they do. And their algorithms are going to get triggered because they change every single year, and you come in and think you're going to spend $500. Woo, big spender over here, and you want to get to 1 million. No, that's not how it works. It's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars at the very minimum. And sometimes, why do you think these pages with 1 million followers or more are selling for 6 figures? That's right, 6 figures, sometimes even 7 figures online, because it takes a long time. Even if you had $100,000, it takes time and proper strategy and proper investment of that money to try and get to 1 million followers, or even 100,000, or whatever it may be. So there was a lot of unrealistic expectations in marketing. There was a lot of stuff that you didn't want to promote that maybe was BS. You see all of these marketing campaigns, half the time they're not good products. Half the time you actually do some research and it's just drop shipping from Alibaba, and it's a terrible product that's falling apart, and you don't want to be passionate about that. But marketing is a very important skill because you need it for social media nowadays, unless you don't use social media, but that's most of the world. You need to know how to market yourself if you're trying to sell a product or a service. And sales and marketing would always go kind of together. Marketing brings you the customers, but what do you do once the customers are in? If it's a physical location into a store, you need to know how to sell them. And sales is a very important skill because you might be able to sell your product or your service, but what happens if that's the only thing you know how to sell? You need to know everything about sales so you can sell yourself at job interviews, so you can sell yourself on dates, so you can sell yourself to friends and family, so you can sell anything that you want to sell in the future. You have a bad car? Well, if you're a car salesman, you're going to be able to sell a car, even if it's your personal vehicle, a little bit more quickly. Now, the way that car sales in Poland works is probably a lot different than in America. For example, I got to sell this Ford. It's going to work a little bit differently than in America, because over here in Poland, you're concerned about rollbacks and whether the car was spliced. You know, it was a salvage title and then it was imported from Germany, and this one's not. But you have to deal with people who are very skeptical, who love negotiation. There is no such thing as, oh, I don't want to negotiate on the price. No, that's it. The customer's going to leave, because over here they love to haggle, because they're going to haggle over the 50-cent fruit or watermelon. That's the mentality. You have to just go with it. It's a different culture. But in America, so far I've noticed that working at a dealership, it's pretty nice. I've lived the past 4 years in Poland, and I just returned just for 2 weeks. I'm visiting my girlfriend. My girlfriend, unfortunately, cannot come over to the U.S. Closed borders and all of that. Not too great, and it's a beautiful rainy day right now. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say this. No matter what brand you would be selling in cars, sure, some might be a little bit easier. Example, if it's a brand you really believe in, you drive the brand, you've been a big fan of it for years, it always helps. But you don't need to know anything about cars. You don't need to know anything about the product that you're selling. If it's your first day, you can always learn about that later. The most important thing, ironically, this is one of the few careers that you may not need a degree for. You may not need to know the exact specific knowledge of the vehicle that you're selling, because you're going to learn it. The only thing you might need to know is a little bit of sales skills or marketing skills, or try to combine them both. I'm now thinking of ideas of how to try and market the products that I'm selling. So at our dealership, as most do, you sell used cars and you sell new cars. And for the pre-owned vehicles, I gotta say it's a little bit tougher to sell them sometimes, because they might not be in good shape. Some of them will be, but if it's an older vehicle, some of them might have some problems. And you know how it is. You're trying to find a vehicle that's under $10,000 or sometimes even under $5,000, and then you gotta factor in the taxes and fees, and that's gonna be at every single dealership. And some people may not enjoy the taxes and fees, but it's very difficult in America to try and find a private party seller, whereas in Poland, that's half the deals right there. But in Poland, you don't have as many people that finance. You have barely any people who finance. The main people who finance are the rich people and the businesses. And the businesses usually lease cars, while in America, almost everybody finances a vehicle. There's very few people that will buy straight up cash every single vehicle. And if they buy one vehicle in cash, they might finance another vehicle. That's just how it works. You have a whole credit system in America, whereas here, you've got people that are using credit cards, and that's normal, but usually the amount that they're able to take out is directly tied to their income, not some score. In America, part of it is tied to your income, usually if it's lower income and you have a lower score. But as soon as your score goes up, they don't really care about your income. I mean, that's an important aspect of it. But whether you're making $50,000 or $60,000 or $100,000, there might be a slight difference, but there's people with 100 or 200 credit cards. In Poland, you don't really have that. You don't have people who are like, oh yeah, I've got my American Express collection, and here's my latest Discover card, and I just signed up for these credit unions, and I've got this. There's whole segments and forums online written by people who have hundreds of credit cards and who have a few $1 million worth of debt that they're able to take out at any moment in time, even though they might be working at a $60,000 job. And that's good money, but if they really wanted to take out all that money, there's no way in heck that they'd ever be able to pay it off in time. Of course, they're not going to do that. That's how they were able to attain such great credit and so many loan options. But in Poland, it's just a completely different environment. So in car sales, I did miss out on a couple sales so far. I sold 10 vehicles my first 4 weeks there. I missed 2 because of bad credit, and unfortunately they did not have a large enough down payment. One didn't even want to give a down payment. So it's not that great. I mean, if you're doing a trade-in, that's good, but most likely the trade-in values are going to be, you know, lower because it's a dealership instead of selling private party. And then sometimes people try and trade in a vehicle that's just not worth that much. It's got a lot of problems to it. It takes money for a dealership to actually fix those problems. So the issue being is that you might have a poor credit customer that only makes, let's say, $500 a week, or maybe even less. You need kind of $500 a week. The $2,000 is kind of the minimum income that banks and credit unions seek. You know, our dealership doesn't do in-house financing, so we can't really do too much with financing. There's going to be pay here lots that will do in-house financing, and they're going to be working with subprime credit unions, subprime banks, and they won't care. But for those vehicles, you're going to pay a premium, and they're most likely going to be in terrible shape, and the money they make is usually from insane value, insane APRs attached to the car that you're buying, and repossessions. They hope that they can repossess it because they're going to give it to someone else and repossess it after a few payments, and non-refundable, and that's how they make their money. Now, some of the buy here, pay here lots are probably going to be a little bit better, but you know, you're going to have some sketchy dealerships, and you're going to have the better dealerships. You're going to have some that mark up $10,000 over MSRP, and we do not do that. For example, I saw Kia Tellurides that are at $65,000 or even $70,000, and Hyundai Palisades that are $50,000, $60,000. These are very expensive vehicles. I mean, at that point, you might want to look at Range Rover or Porsche. It does not make sense to be paying $70,000 for a Kia. No offense, Kia and Hyundai, I'm pretty sure they're great cars, but that's a completely different price level. Now we're talking about Mercedes, BMW, Audi, and Lexus, Acura. There's so many other car brands that for that amount of money, I mean, buy a Corvette. What I've learned so far is not to think as the customer. That was a mistake that I've had to go through a few times in my first few weeks, because you're going to have customers that may not make a logical decision. So if you're taking out, you know, there's going to be examples online that you see someone took out a 96-month loan, 84-month loan, whatever, these crazy long terms for a vehicle that is going to depreciate almost immediately when they take it off the lot, and then it's going to depreciate even further because right now all the vehicle values are up. And if they're paying $65,000 for a Kia Telluride, and let's say they personalize it and it's got some features that will make the vehicle a little bit harder to sell, they don't realize that in a few years, when they take that in for a trade-in, they're going to be underwater, and then they're going to want to go with negative equity into another vehicle. And you know, you just can't think like a customer sometimes, because not all of their financial decisions will be very logical. But as a sales guy, you just try and put them into the perfect vehicle, and you might help out with a few financial tips and tricks. But for the most part, someone does their research on a vehicle. I've learned that dealerships don't make as much money as they used to, especially right now during COVID and lockdowns, and when these microchip shortages started, and we've got low inventory. If you sell too many of the same model, maybe if it's a premium model, the brand might not be making the premium models anymore because they're going to require more chips, and they decided to do a lower base level, and you're going to get 4 lower base trim whatever brand cars you ordered instead of 2 or 3 higher premium level. And the higher net worth individuals will only want the higher level stuff with heated steering wheel and moonroof and heated back seats in the 3rd row and all of these nice premium cool features. And trust me, I would probably want that too. There's some stuff that I just don't care. I don't think that would be a deal breaker for me, but there's clients where it definitely will be a deal breaker, and it makes my job a little bit more difficult. With lower inventory, you can't really sell as much, because you could try and sell the people who are already coming in for a very specific vehicle, but sometimes you can't because they want something and they don't care. They will go across 3 different states to try and find it in the exact specs that they have it. In total, I think I sold 14 vehicles thus far within over 5 weeks, 5.5, or however long it's been. I think it's been 14 vehicles. What I like is that for the brand that I'm working for, which I sell Mitsubishis. Now, some people may have an opinion already formed about Mitsubishi. Let me just say this. It's a little bit more difficult because there's less models to sell. But I've noticed this for multiple brands out there, that they're now choosing that crossover utility vehicles are the way to go, because Americans love crossovers. And then you might not have convertibles to sell, or sports cars, or pickup trucks, but it is what it is. For example, a very American brand, Buick, they used to have pretty cool sedans. Where did they go? In Europe, you're going to have Opels, which some of the Opels and some of the Buicks might look very similar. Why? Because it's basically rebadging. It's the same vehicle. And these Opel Insignias, which I think it was a Buick LaCrosse or whatever it was called, maybe not a LaCrosse, I forgot, but they're a pretty cool car, except they're not produced anymore. Buick only produces crossover vehicles. So it's a little bit more difficult to sell a vehicle that you might not be in, but you just have to put on a mask, believe in your product, say it's the best, find as many of the positive features about it as you can, try and overcome any objections that there might be, and you're learning every single day. So you're learning more about each vehicle. You're learning more about each new vehicle that comes in and each used vehicle that comes in, because there's going to be different brands. So, for example, there might be a Jeep, there might be a Chrysler, there might be a Chevy, there might be a Ford, and you might not know all the features that are in these vehicles, and some of them will have this cool hidden feature. Some of them had remote start. I didn't even know about it, and we're learning together. That's the text you use. Let's learn together. Yeah, we'll learn together. And you actually do. You try and find out, hey, does it have this feature? Hey, will it remote start? Hey, will the trunk automatically open if I do a kicking motion or if I wave my hands or whatever? And some of them do, and that's pretty cool. Some of them you're able to open the trunk just from a little remote. I like that. And then you're able to close it. Some of them you're only able to open it and then not close it. And you're like, huh, that's kind of not too cool. It really all depends on manufacturers. Some manufacturers may make some really cool cars, and the same manufacturers may then go around and do an updated grille, updated taillights, updated this, and then the next model looks terrible for some reason. On BMW, the ultimate driving machine. Except some of the ultimate driving machines that they've made have been terrible pieces of junk. And this is coming from somebody who loves BMW, but when you hear horror stories of people blowing up their engines, spending 50 grand on a newer BMW, not one of the old ones because the old 7 Series were terrible, but a newer vehicle that still is under warranty. And if they didn't have that warranty, by the way, Mitsubishi has one of the longest bumper-to-bumper warranties out there. It's 5 years, 60,000, so that's a big selling point. Right now, my goal is to get to over $4,000 in 1 month of sale, and then work my way up. So in the future, $5,000 per month would be nice, but technically speaking, with what Mitsubishi paid me on their little card, they have this thing called Diamond Rewards. If you sell a newer vehicle, I get paid the same amount of commission for a newer used vehicle from the dealership. But if I sell a vehicle that's newer and it qualifies, it's going to have different rewards. But maybe it's $75, maybe it's $150, maybe it's $125 per vehicle. If you get paid $100 or $150 per car, or whatever it may be, then an additional $125, $150 if everything goes well for a newer model CUV is always going to make a difference. So I technically calculated that before taxes, my first 4 weeks, we were very close to $3.5 grand with what Mitsubishi paid me through their little card. And that was that was an addition, of course. So that was pretty cool. Now let's try to get to $4 grand. You might have slower months, you might have longer months, you might have days where nobody comes in. I've had that. Nobody came in. There was one day where nobody came in. Nobody came in and there was barely any leads. And then there might be one day where you have 3 people that come in for the same time, and there's a lot of people that are very busy right now and you have to help them. And then, you know, there's only so much that you can do. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you hear about on the forums. There's this really cool subreddit called Ask Car Sales, and some of the horror stories out there that you hear about haven't happened yet, at least at our dealership. But there's been some interesting stuff. For example, we've had people come in by foot or by tricycle. There's people who come in and unfortunately they've got bad credit and they can't put down a down payment, and there's not much you can do about that. There's people that will come in and they'll have cash for everything and they'll be ready. There's other people that you may not expect, but then you realize, holy moly, they've got a pretty good job and they're purchasing this vehicle because maybe it's a gift for somebody. Maybe it's a first vehicle for their son or daughter or whatever, and that's all cool. And depending on the person, you have to qualify them. What are their financing options? Are they doing cash? What vehicle are they looking at? You're going to ask a lot of questions. You have to ask the right questions. Ask good questions, get good answers. So just go through a lot of trading videos to see what I could say. Sometimes saying too much is also going to be a negative point. Sometimes saying too little, that's going to be a negative point. One thing that I like to do on test drives is get people somewhere to a little location nearby, a gas station, Walgreens, whatever it may be. Get them out of the car and say, wow, look at that. It's a beautiful car. What do you think? How did it drive? Da-da-da. If you get them to say yes a lot of times, and if they like the way the vehicle drives and they like the way it looks, and you're like, all right, well, let's get back into the test drive. And when you get back, ask, hey, do you want to own this vehicle? Would you like to own this vehicle? And if they say yes, cool. You're doing everything right. Now it just depends on their financing options. As long as you get them inside and you get them talk with the finance manager, in a lot of cases, as soon as they're already fired up, you're getting closer to that sale. Now, you might lose some sales because, again, there's nothing you can really do. If someone doesn't have good credit, they don't have a good down payment, you're not going to give them $5,000. I mean, let's be real. Ultimately, if it came down to it, if I had to give half of my commission for a sale to occur, then I'd do it, because there's always extra money. It hasn't happened yet, but usually it's not going to come down to such a small sum. Usually it's going to be hundreds or thousands of dollars. You can't really do anything with that. Car sales, you work longer hours, so I'm scheduled to work 45, and I do. And sometimes you have to get up to 50 hours because a client comes in late and you have to stay and do a little overtime, even though you don't get paid overtime because it's commission. So there was times where I drove to a client's house. There was times that I came in before or after work or on my day off, or I'm getting phone calls or text messages. It's kind of like a lifestyle, It's not just a job, but you have to be open and happy and positive and always responding and politely and respectfully respond to everybody's questions. And if they've got some concerns, we've had some issues. Some people have been calling with issues. You can't freak out. You can't be swearing. You can't do any of those unprofessional things. You have to treat them with respect and say, I understand about this. Let's try and fix it. Let me see what I can do about it. And, sometimes, unfortunately, there's things that can't be fixed. Maybe it's not your fault, but you're still going to get yelled at. It's a people position. You have to be able to be good with people, but sometimes there's always going to be those bad days where there's things that just happen, and you have to just smile about it, and that's it. Ultimately, it's good for my tinnitus because for the most part, it's a quiet job. There's sometimes where car alarms go off, and I hate that. I'm not a big fan of that, so I try to avoid that now. If there's a scenario where I can foresee that, hey, that car alarm's probably going to go off, I try to get the car keys for it. There's always going to be some clients that are trying to rip open the doors, and that's technically breaking into a vehicle. Do you do that in the parking lot? No, the vehicles are going to be closed. So I'm just saying, there's been some clients that have ripped open doors and they're surprised, Pikachu face. Why is this car suddenly blaring an alarm at me? And they have to wait like a minute because we have to find the car keys, and it's not like I have them just ready in my hand, like, oh, that car was, okay, boom. So sometimes people will do some strange things, and you have to be ready for that. Sometimes they'll say some strange things. There's been some really weird comments that I've heard. Sometimes when you're conversating with these individuals, we've gotten into some really strange topics. I try and not get into anything political or religious or, the big three you don't mention at dinner. But if a client starts talking, you politely listen, and you might nod your head and agree sometimes, but you try not to say anything that might displease them. But, it's good. There's been some awkward conversations that I've gotten into, and you can't really just have to try and figure a way to get out of it without offending the customer, because the customer doesn't understand that some conversations are just not appropriate. So it is what it is, but there's been some interesting, very high energy clients that have came in, and, it's always just something fun. Overall, I don't know anything mechanically about cars, maybe how to fix a tire, but that's it, and change my oil, but I still wouldn't want to do that. It's messy. I like moving around cars, don't really do that too much, but I like it every chance I get. I like cars. I like driving new vehicle. In Poland, there's not too many pickup trucks, so the first time I ever drove a pickup truck was at the dealership, and turns out I like pickup trucks because there's a lot of space. I'm a big guy. Never knew about that. One thing that people might ask is, there's dealerships where they pay commissions. This is a dealership where it's salary plus commission. So you get paid a set amount, even if you don't sell anything. But of course, if you don't sell anything, if you sell absolutely zero, you're going to get fired at any dealership. They have a recommended amount that you should sell. They want to sell at least 8 cars a month. So far, first month, I was able to technically beat that. So let's try and, be above that number because it's also, hey, it's me, it's my earnings. If I do pretty poorly, I'm not going to be having a great next week when the paycheck comes in. I prefer seeing a larger paycheck. But also, I did notice, hey, Uncle Sam and his taxes. I did have a smaller paycheck and I did have a larger paycheck. And in that larger paycheck, a lot more money was disappearing with taxes. And there was tax for this and tax for that and Medicare and this. And I was like, the state taxes and federal tax, healthcare and whatnot. And it's like, well, it's one of those things that's unavoidable, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely something to think about. If you're new, if you're just thinking, hey, maybe I should start car sales, By the way, there's a YouTube channel that I've been watching a lot, so I'm going to link him down below. I know he's very high energy, but check him out. I've been liking a lot of his stutter stuff. I like it. I've been liking a lot of his content recently, and he speaks very well. That's always good if you could actually speak your thoughts to the customer. Alrighty. That kind of looks like a Buick. That's an Opal right there, so just wanted to show that. There's another one that looks almost like a Buick. That's an Opal. There we go. Yep, that's a little crossover. There's a Renault. No, that's a Peugeot. And that's what I was talking about, a Opel Insignia. Looks very similar to a Buick. Look at that. And there's the end of it. Very similar to a Buick, except I know wagons aren't popular, but the sedan version, same thing.